Hey all, this is Blue Eyes Master 91, and I thought I would do a few test hands for my Exodia deck, so let's get on into it. 5. Alright, with any Exodia deck, you tend to want to go second. So this isn't a horrible hand, but it's not the best in the world. Let's see what we'll draw into. That's not bad. So I would play... No, wait. I would want to set 2 cards face down, activate Gravekeeper Servant, and then play Card Advance to look at the top 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So these are the 5 cards we'll be drawing into in the coming turns. What I'm going to do is that. And that will allow me to end my turn. So it'll be my opponent's turn. On their draw phase, I'll activate Legacy Ayada to draw into Skull Angel, and then I can do it again, because it is not a once a turn effect, and I can draw into the first piece of the puzzle. Now, see, there's a... There we go. That's a lot better. Alright, so at this point, I do want Sangan on top, but at this point, I can summon out Ra's Disciple to get 2 more monsters out, or I can go into Skull Angel. I'll use Skull Angel, and I'd pass turn. They would risk the attack, Gravekeeper Servant would kick in, and then Skull Angel. Skull Angel's effect lets me draw into Sangan, and that would be their turn. So I would draw. This helps me out a lot, because now I can board build. First things first, Swords of Revealing Light, followed by setting Sangan in defense and passing the turn. My opponents can do whatever. They can set up more. Let's say they just summon a monster and in their turn. Be our turn again. I would draw into Cemetery Bomb. I would then normal summon out my Ra's Disciple, which allows me to search the deck for 2 more copies. It also lets me get an idea on where pieces are, just so I know how well they shuffled into the deck. So I can summon out 3 Ra's Disciples just like that. Ooh. But I would choose to end my turn at this point. Then let's say our opponent sets a couple of cards in the back row and ends their turn. So it'll be our move again. We get on to the Big Eye. I'll switch 2 of the Ra's Disciples into defense, leaving that middle one in attack, and I would end my turn. Let's say they use Twin Twisters to get rid of these 2 cards. And then they begin by attacking into this face down. My copy of Sangan, which allows me to search the deck for the copy of Exodia's Head. So that right there will let them know that this is indeed an Exodia built deck, or styled deck, so they'll need to start trying to rush the game and try to build a bigger board to OTK, so that way I don't get Exodia. They would attack this one. It being the Big Eye, I once again get to stack the deck. 2, 3, 4, and 5. 3, 4, 5. Okay, so what do we have coming up? I actually like how I like this as it is, with if Flame Veil Guard does, if I can keep a Disciple on the field, I can go into Trish. Though that's not my immediate plan. I'd set Cemetery Bomb to try to bait out another back row negate destruction, and then I'll switch our final copy of disciple to defense and pass the turn. Our opponent would likely kill off at least 2 of the disciples, and it'd be our draw. I'd set and I would pass. On the draw phase, I would play Gravity Bind. So that would likely end their turn, and I would draw into our 3rd piece of the puzzle. I would pass turn at this point. There's nothing else I can do. They would likely summon a monster in defense, switch their, let's say it's a synchro monster into defense, and then their turn. I would draw and immediately set and pass the turn. They would draw, they can set a monster in attack mode that is, let's say, level 3, and it has just enough strength to get over my 600 defense, and that would end their turn. Be my turn, I would draw. I would activate Mystic Mine, getting rid of effects from monsters. And I would normal summon out a piece of Exodia and link it away. Go into Link Kuriboh. And that would end my turn. Let's say that level 3 monster swings into Link Kuriboh. I would use his effect to negate any and all damage. It'd be my turn. At that point, I would draw. I would send the right leg onto the field, linking him away for Link Kuriboh again. This is where Dark Factory comes into play. I would activate Dark Factory in mass production to take back the 2 copies of Exodia, or the 2 pieces of Exodia I used to summon Link Kuriboh. And that would end my turn. Let's say our opponent exceeds summons and it's Tornado Dragon. So they detach 2 to get rid of Mystic Mine and Gravity Bind. And then he attacks. I would Magic Cylinder the attack, dealing them a bunch of damage. That'd be our turn. I would draw. Wait, yeah. Okay. So now we have 4 pieces of Exodia and a 2k Defender on the field, along with Link Kuriboh. And we have Cemetery Bomb waiting in the wait. I would end my turn here. Our opponent can attack. They don't have near enough power to get over it. They attack with their other monster, and I use Link Kuriboh, and then they take 2k worth of damage. They're pretty low now. So our turn, I would draw. I would pass turn. On their draw, I would play Cemetery Bomb. Let's say they had 100 points. My mistake in the regular video, I said 1,000 points of damage is 100 points of damage for Cemetery Bomb for every card in their grave. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13, 14, 15, 16. Let's say they have 20 cards in their graveyard, just over 9. So that would be 2,000 points of damage on top of the 2,000 they took from my Flamevale Guard. And then I believe it's 24 for Tornado Dragon. That's 6,400 points of damage already dealt to our opponent. So that would end that would move them into the battle phase. They would kill Flamevale Guard and pass their turn. I would draw, activate Gravekeeper Servant. I'd summon my right arm again to get back Link Kuriboh. I can then play my Dark Factory to get back Flamvell Guard and the right arm of Exodia. And that would end my turn. They would attack and discard the top card of their deck, and I would use Link Rebal's effect to negate the damage. Be my turn. I would draw. Card of Fate in this situation is not useful, so I would just set and set. Ending the turn and waiting to see what comes up next. They would attack. Gravekeeper Servant would activate. Flamevale Guard would just barely survive. And then they would pass turn not wanting to send more than one card to the graveyard. I would draw. And I would set. And I would pass. Once again, they'd use their weaker monster to attack. Gravekeeper Servant into the face down. It's my Nimble Momonga. I would gain 1,000 life back. And I would gain access to 2 more copies of the Flying Squirrel. This deck is not designed to win fast. It's designed to stall your opponent into trying to deck them out or getting Exodia. So, be my turn. I would draw, and I would set. They would draw. I would use my drop-off to force them to discard their draw. They would attack into one of the face downs, and Gravekeeper Servant would send the next card they would draw to the graveyard, and I would gain another 1,000 points of life, and it'd be my draw. I draw into which I set a card face. I set her face down, and I will pass. They would attack into the new set monster. Gravekeeper Servant would kick in. She goes to the graveyard, and the game is done. I've won. I have Exodia. And that's the game. So, again, it's not the fastest deck in the world, but that's why it's a nice deck to have. I did go through all but a small handful of cards. There's not a lot left in the deck. So, it's always interesting to see how many cards I'll use when I use this deck. Sometimes you can get right into your searchers, and you can search out 3 pieces like it's nothing, and then the big eye could set you up for basically a 4 or 5 turn win. Sometimes you start out with 2 pieces. Sometimes you don't start with any. So it all depends. The one thing I do with this deck when I shuffle is I'll return everything else into it, and then I will insert the pieces into the deck in random spots. So that way they're not clumped together. And then I'd shuffle with them in. So, just a way to make sure you don't have all 5 basically in a row. I'm not sure how tournament legal that would be, but again, it's just my personal way of making sure that, you know, the cards don't stick together. And this is one of the only 2 decks I will do that strategy with. I do have a deck that uses the Destiny board as well. I will do a profile for that probably sometime after Thanksgiving. And that is the only other deck I will take the time to make sure that cards aren't next to each other. So let's get into the second hand. So that is our second match. Second duel of the match is starting hand and our first draw. So not horrible, not nearly as bad as the last one. we can immediately kind of set up our board with level limit and Gravekeeper Servant, along with our Mirror Force set in the back row as well. And that would pass our turn. Our opponent would likely kill off our witch, and she would allow us to get our head of Exodia. I'm just kind of curious how it shuffled. See, that's what I was trying to avoid. They like to stick. So that one goes there. That one goes on top. See if I can't just thin them out a little bit. And try to avoid a constant drawing of them. So it would be our draw. Fuchsia, that's not a bad draw. Unfortunately, level limit would force it into defense. So we'd play swords and pass the turn. Our opponent would likely start to set up more and pass their turn. I would set that. I would pass on their draw. I'd use drop off. And they would pass. I would draw. Set. Pass the turn. On their draw, I would use my Yada. The Legacy Yada to draw. And they would still pass. They're in their last round of swords. I would draw. I'd summon out my Ra's Disciple, who gets forced into defense upon the summoning. That's much better. So there's 2 and there's 3. So now we have some defense and a way to board blast them if needed. So that would end our turn. They'd be able to draw. They would set something face down, and in their turn, destroying the Swords of Revealing Light. It'd be my turn. I would draw. I would set a monster in defense. And I would pass my turn. The opponent would likely only want to attack with one monster. They would first likely use an MST or something to get rid of that. A single destruction, not a multi. And then they would go in and attack Nimble Momonga after discarding the top card, allowing me to gain access to the other 2 Nimbles in my deck. So with that done, they would likely pass their turn. I would draw, I would set, and I would end. They'd attack into one of the Nimbles. I'd gain another 1,000, and they would end their turn. I would draw. Kind of not useful now. And I would pass my turn. They would attack into the other face down, giving me a total of 3,000 additional life points and putting me at 11,000. They would end their turn. I would draw, and I would set. And I would end the turn. They would attack into the face down, and I would destroy their strongest monster. They would end their turn. Draw into the big eye, send them face down, and I would end my turn. They'd likely attack into the big eye. 2, 3, 4, and 5. They would likely go into the face downs because they have either an ash or something that would negate my ability to search. So it'd be our turn. I would draw. I'd set a card face down just so that way I don't got to worry about the card limit for a little bit. I would pass turn. They would destroy my Raw Disciple, and they would pass. I would draw, set a monster, and pass the turn. They'd kill my Sangin. Nothing good coming up. So I would be able to... Wait, 1, 2, 3. Here's 1. There it is. Okay, so I'd get my arm. And I'd be able to draw. I would play Mystic Mine, and then card advance. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Top 5 cards. And that sets us up for the win. I would normal summon to go into my link. And I would end my turn knowing that I have more monsters. Let's say they attack into Linkuriboh. I would use Mirror Force to board wipe them. And then during their main phase 2, let's say they used Heartbeat's Feather Duster to get rid of the rest of my back row. And my field spell. So it'd be my turn and I'd draw. I'd set a new card. And I would pass. He would draw, they would draw, I would activate my Obliterate. And I would send my Ross Disciple to my hand. And my right leg into the grave. This could be bad for me because I no longer have Dark Factory on the very top. I should have waited a turn. Deck shuffled. They would attack. I would use Linkuriboh, and they would pass. I still got my factory mass production, so I'd play it, and I would declare an automatic victory. So that is my Exodia deck. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys after the holiday.